She was born in a village compound where the dust holds the heat long after dark. Her skin was deep brown, her hair was black. But her eyes were the color of shallow water in sunlight, pale, bright, almost lit from behind. No one recorded her name, no hospital took her measurements, no geneticist ever came. But someone took a photograph, and that photograph has circled the internet for years, reposted, argued over, called fake by thousands of people who have never met her. The comments always say the same thing. Contact lenses, Photoshop, impossible. Because everyone knows blue eyes belong to Europeans, to Scandinavians, to the Baltic coast, to pale faces in cold countries. Everyone knows that. Everyone is wrong. There are people across Africa, dark-skinned, with no European ancestor anywhere in living memory, whose eyes are unmistakably blue. Some of them live alone with it. Some of them live in villages where it appears again and again, in cousins, in siblings, in children who have never left. Scientists have theories. Scientists do not have an answer. To understand why, we have to start with something much simpler. We have to start with what blue eyes actually are. There is no blue pigment in any human eye. None. Not in Estonia, not in Ireland, not in that village compound. The color you see is not a substance. It is an event happening in real time, in the front of the eye. Everything depends on one thing: melanin. The same pigment that darkens skin and hair also fills the iris, the ring of muscle around your pupil. Melanin sits in the layers of that muscle, and how much of it sits there decides everything. More melanin equals brown eyes. Less melanin equals blue eyes. That is the whole equation. Here is what happens when the melanin is missing. Light enters the eye and passes through the front layer of the iris. In a brown eye, dense melanin absorbs it immediately, and brown reflects back. In an eye with almost no melanin in the front layer, the light keeps going. It hits the back of the iris, it scatters. And scattered light throws back the shorter wavelengths first, which the human eye reads as blue. The sky works the same way. There is no blue paint above your head. Sunlight scatters through the atmosphere, and blue reaches your eye first. A blue iris is a small sky, 3 millimeters wide, doing the same thing. So blue eyes are not colored blue. They only appear that way. And they appear that way for a reason that has nothing to do with color and everything to do with absence. Brown remains the human default by an enormous margin. Roughly 79% of people on Earth have brown eyes. In Africa and much of Asia, the concentration runs higher still. Which means blue eyes require something to go missing. And in almost every case on Earth, one gene decides whether it does. The gene is called OCA2. It sits on chromosome 15, and its job is to help build melanin inside the iris. When OCA2 runs at full strength, the iris fills with pigment, brown eyes. But OCA2 does not decide its own volume. Another gene sits nearby and controls it. That gene is called HERC2, and inside HERC2 there is a small stretch of DNA that works like a dial. Thousands of years ago, that dial changed. A single letter in the sequence switched. Scientists have a name for it, Rs 129-13832. One position, one substitution, out of 3 billion. The change does not add blue. It does not create pigment. It turns OCA2 down. Less melanin reaches the iris, the front layer stays thin, and light begins to scatter. Blue eyes appear as a side effect of something being reduced. This variant is recessive. That word matters more than any other in this story. You carry 2 copies of the region, one from your mother, one from your father. If both copies carry the change, your eyes are blue. If only one does, melanin production continues, and your eyes will almost certainly be brown. Melanin wins whenever it is present, which means the change can hide. A brown-eyed man and a brown-eyed woman can each carry one silent copy and never know. Their child can receive both. Blue eyes, from parents who have none, appearing as if from nowhere. Grandparents look at the baby and search for an explanation. It works in the other direction too. Blue-eyed parents can produce brown-eyed children. The variant can sit unexpressed for a generation, or 3, or 5, passed down invisibly through people who look nothing like it. So the trait travels quietly, and it travels back to a single moment. Somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago, one child was born with 2 copies of that change. Not in a city, not in a kingdom. In a scattered band of hunter-gatherers living near the northwestern shores of the Black Sea, in what is now Ukraine or southern Russia. It was the Mesolithic, The Ice Age had ended, the glaciers had pulled back, and Europe had turned green again. Cold, wild, thick with forest. Build the world by what was missing. No farms, no wheat, no barley, no herds, no villages that lasted more than a season, no writing, no metal, no wheel. What existed was stone, fire, water, and movement. These people followed rivers. They hunted red deer. They fished shallow lakes. They knew the land by smell and by memory, because maps did not exist yet. And in one of those groups, a child opened pale eyes for the first time in human history. Nothing happened. That is the strange part. The mutation caused no pain. It granted no advantage in hunting, no better night vision, no resistance to cold. It did not help that child survive. It only changed how that child looked, but it stood out, and it was passed on. In 2008, a research team at the University of Copenhagen, led by Hans Eiberg, published a finding that reframed the entire question. They traced the variant across populations from Jordan to Denmark to Turkey and found the same sequence, unchanged, in every blue-eyed person they tested. Not a similar mutation, the identical one. Which means it happened once. It did not evolve separately in different places. Every blue-eyed person alive descends from a single ancestor who lived and died in the Mesolithic world. Their name is gone, their bones are unfound, but 7,000 years later we found people who carried it. In 2006, in a mountain cave in northern Spain, in the Cantabrian range, cavers found a skeleton. The site is called La Braña Arentero. The man is called La Braña I. He died around 7,000 years ago, in cold air, at altitude, which is the only reason his DNA survived at all. In 2014, a team led by Carles Lalueza Fox sequenced his genome. What came back rearranged the field. He had blue eyes. The variant was there. Both copies, unmistakable, and he had dark skin. His genome carried the ancestral versions of the pigmentation genes that lighten European skin today. Not pale, not olive, dark. Black hair, dark skin, blue eyes. 7,000 years ago, in Spain, in a hunter who never planted a seed in his life, for decades the assumption had been that blue eyes arrived with farmers, alongside light skin, as a package deal moving west out of the Near East. La Braña I dismantled that in a single publication. He was a forager, he was dark, and his eyes were already blue. Then came Motala. In central Sweden, at a lakeside site, archaeologists recovered the remains of hunter-gatherers roughly 7,700 years old. Those genomes carried the blue eye variant too, but they also carried early versions of the light-skin variants, lighter than La Braña I, same eyes. Put the two sites side by side and something important falls out. Blue eyes and pale skin did not evolve together. They arose in different places, on different timelines, in different populations, and only later, through migration and mixing, did they begin appearing in the same faces. Which means the combination that the internet calls impossible, dark skin with blue eyes, is not an anomaly at all. It is the original arrangement. It came first. So the story should be simple. One mutation, one ancestor, and dark skin with blue eyes is the oldest version of the trait. Case closed. Except it isn't, because that explanation collapses the moment you take it to Africa. Follow the variant on a map and it fills Europe. It thins across the Near East. It appears in pockets through Central and South Asia along old Indo-European corridors. And then, across most of sub-Saharan Africa, it essentially disappears. Not rare, close to absent. Population studies looking for RS12913832 south of the Sahara come back with almost nothing. There is a reason. The Black Sea variant is roughly 10,000 years old, and it arose in a population that had already been outside Africa for tens of thousands of years. It spread north and west with people who never went back. It did not travel south. Whatever paths it took, sub-Saharan Africa was not one of them. At the same time, the populations there carry the highest melanin concentrations on Earth, in skin, and in the iris alike. Deep brown is not just common. It is close to universal, and it is backed by the strongest pigment production in the human species. Now put a village in that picture. Dark-skinned families, generations deep, in a place no European ever settled. And in that village, again and again, pale blue eyes. In children, in cousins, in siblings born years apart. The Copenhagen explanation cannot touch it. The Mesolithic hunter cannot explain it. Labranja 1 tells you the combination is possible, but he does not tell you how it reached a compound in equatorial Africa 9,000 years later. The mechanism that explains Estonia explains nothing here, so something else has to be happening, and there is a second door into blue eyes that has nothing to do with ancestry at all. In 1951, a Dutch ophthalmologist named Petrus Johannes Waardenburg described a cluster of features that kept appearing together. Brilliant pale blue eyes, often both, sometimes only one, sometimes two colors inside a single iris, a streak of white hair at the front of the scalp, patches of pale skin, inner corners of the eyes set unusually wide, and deafness present from birth. The condition carries his name, Waardenburg syndrome, and it is the second door. Here is the mechanism. Early in development, long before a face exists, a band of cells called the neural crest forms along the embryo's back. Those cells then migrate outward, and they build an unusual mix of things: nerves, parts of the inner ear, and melanocytes, the cells that manufacture pigment and deliver it to skin, hair, and the iris. In Waardenburg syndrome, a mutation disrupts that migration. Genes including PAX3, MITF, SOX10, and EDNRB fail to guide the cells correctly. Melanocytes never reach their destinations in the right numbers. So the iris is built without its pigment cells, not turned down, like the Black Sea variant does. Absent, which is why the blue is so intense, almost glowing, brighter than any inherited European blue. And the same failure explains the white forelock and the hearing loss, because those cells were supposed to build the inner ear too. 4 recognized types, roughly 1 birth in 42,000. And critically, most forms are dominant, meaning 1 copy is enough. Now, understand what that means. This requires no European ancestor, no migration, no gene flow. It can arise in any population on Earth, in any generation, on the darkest skin, spontaneously. Blue eyes without Europe. And once it is in a family, it can pass to half the children. Before I show you the last part, everything I just showed you about blue eyes in African populations is traceable inside your own DNA results. Over at the OriginDNA, I built a 3-volume PDF guide bundle that teaches you how to unlock your raw data, find relatives, and uncover those deeper origin stories. Link is below. Now, here's what nobody talks about. Leave Africa for a moment and go to Indonesia, to Bhutan, an island off the southeast arm of Sulawesi in the Banda Sea. The people there are dark-skinned, Southeast Asian, with no European settlement in their history. And in certain communities on that island, the eyes are blue. Not one person. Families. Neighbors. Children photographed beside their parents. All of them with the same pale, luminous irises against deep brown faces. Photographers found them. The images went viral, and the internet said what it always says: fake, lenses, filters. Except researchers went, and the reports came back describing exactly what the photographs showed, along with the detail the photographs could not capture. Many of those individuals are deaf or hard of hearing from birth. That detail is the fingerprint. It points straight back to the neural crest, straight back to Waardenburg syndrome. But Bhutan answers a bigger question than diagnosis. It answers how a whole community ends up this way. The island is remote. The communities are small. For generations, people married within them because there was nobody else to marry. And when a population stays that closed, genetics stops behaving the way it does in a city. Call it the founder effect. If a rare variant happens to sit in one of the founding families of an isolated group, it does not need to spread anywhere. It simply stays, concentrating with every generation as the same lineages intermarry. A 1 in 42,000 condition can become 1 in 50, 1 in 20. Common, in one village, and nowhere else on Earth. Nothing about that mechanism is specific to Indonesia. Isolation, small numbers, marriage within the community, those conditions exist in remote regions across Africa, and they always have. Bhutan proves the pattern is possible. It does not prove it is what happened. There is a third route, and unlike the other 2, this one is written into the map. Go to North Africa, to the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, the Rif Coast, the Kabylie Highlands of Algeria, the Saharan interior where Tuareg communities have lived for centuries. Among Amazigh populations, blue and green eyes surface with real frequency. Not constantly, but often enough that nobody there considers it remarkable. Pale eyes on a Berber face are simply part of the local range. That is not a mystery. That is history. The Mediterranean coast has been a corridor for 3,000 years. Phoenicians founded ports along it, Rome held it for centuries, Vandals crossed from Spain and ruled Carthage, Byzantines followed. Arab expansions came in successive waves. The Ottomans administered much of it. Spain and France colonized it. And running underneath all of it, an older current, because populations moved back and forth across the Strait of Gibraltar and the Sinai long before any of those empires existed. Genomic studies confirm what the history implies. North African populations carry substantial Eurasian ancestry layered over indigenous African ancestry, mixing at different depths depending on the region. Some of that gene flow is thousands of years old. Some of it is medieval, some is recent. And ancient Eurasian ancestry reached further than the coast. Sequencing work in the Horn of Africa has traced Eurasian gene flow into Ethiopian and Somali populations, going back thousands of years, well before the colonial era. So the Black Sea variant did enter Africa. It came from the north and the northeast, along the routes that people actually walked. But notice the geography. That explanation works along the Mediterranean rim and thins as you move inland. By the time you reach the equatorial belt, it has almost nothing left to offer, which is exactly where the photographs keep coming from. So what is actually documented and what is not? Start with the images. A boy in a school uniform, pale eyes wide. A young woman photographed in profile against a mud wall. An infant held up to a doorway light. These photographs recirculate constantly, and each time they do, a location gets attached. South Sudan, Nigeria, Uganda, sometimes Kenya. Sometimes a tribe is named, sometimes not. Often the same photograph is assigned 3 different countries within a month. That is the first problem. The images travel faster than the information about them. The second problem is the accusation. Every post fills with the same replies, contacts, editing, bleach. And the accusation has a mechanism, because colored lenses are cheap and widely sold, and some photographs genuinely are edited. So the doubt is not entirely irrational. It is just applied indiscriminately to real cases and fake ones alike until nothing is believed. Now the part that matters. Individual cases are real. There are documented African families with naturally blue eyes. There are clinical case reports of Waardenburg syndrome in African patients, in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Sudan, describing exactly the expected picture: pale irises, white forelock, congenital deafness. Doctors have examined these people. The condition is on record. But here is the honest position, and it is the whole point of this video. There is no peer-reviewed study of an entire blue-eyed African tribe, no genomic survey of a village, no published pedigree tracing the trait through a community across generations. The claim circulates in headlines and captions and almost nowhere else. Search the literature and you find individual patients, not populations. So the title of this video is slightly wrong, and deliberately so. The mystery is not why these people have blue eyes. The mystery is why, after all this time, nobody has gone and found out. Here is the part that should bother you. Africa contains more human genetic diversity than the entire rest of the world combined. Every population outside it descends from a small group that left, which means the deepest branches of the human family tree are all still there in African populations, holding variants that exist nowhere else. And Africa is the least sequenced continent on Earth. For years, the overwhelming majority of participants in genome-wide studies were of European descent. That gap has narrowed, but it has not closed, and the consequence is direct. When a rare trait appears in a European family, there is a database, a research network, and a funded pathway to an answer. When it appears in a village in South Sudan, there is nothing waiting. Then there is cost. Answering this requires a team traveling to a remote region, obtaining consent, drawing samples, running audiology tests, sequencing whole genomes, and building a family tree across 3 generations. That is expensive, slow, and produces no product at the end. No drug, no patent, no commercial reason for anyone to fund it. And there is a reason that has nothing to do with money. In many communities, pale eyes are not read as a curiosity. They are read as a sign. the evil eye, a witch's mark, a curse on the household. Children with the trait have been hidden, kept from school, kept away from strangers with cameras and questionnaires. Families who have been treated as cursed do not volunteer for studies, so the answer is not hidden in the genome. It is sitting in a village, waiting. One funded trip, consent, cheek swabs, hearing tests, a pedigree, a few months of lab work. That is all it would take. And it still has not happened. Go back to the girl in the compound. You know things about her now that the comment sections do not. You know there is no blue in her eyes, only light scattering off the back of an iris that was built without its pigment. You know that dark skin with blue eyes is not a contradiction, because a hunter in a Spanish cave carried exactly that combination 7,000 years ago, before farming, before Europe looked like Europe. You know there is more than one door into that color, and that one of them opens in any population on Earth without a single European ancestor. What you still do not know is which door opened for her. Nobody does. Not because the science is impossible, but because nobody has gone. That is what makes this story different from the others on this channel. Usually we trace a trait backwards until we find the answer. This time, the answer exists. It is reachable, and it is simply sitting in a village that no research grant has ever considered worth the flight. Blue eyes were never really a color. They are a record of movement, of isolation, of chance, of who married whom, in places too small to appear on a map. And if your own eyes are blue, the same thing is happening in them right now. The same absence, the same scattered light, a different door maybe, the same physics. If this story sparked your curiosity, like, comment, and share it. On this channel, we uncover the genetic origins of entire peoples, from ancient migrations to the hidden layers inside African, European, and Asian ancestry. Every population has a story written in its genes.
Thanks for watching. Before you head out, don't let your DNA profile just sit there collecting digital dust. Tap the link in the description to download your ebook and finally make sense of it all tonight.